Welcome to the Folktale Project. This is Dan Scholz. Today's story, Thomas Berennikov, is a story that should seem, at least the beginning of which, should seem very familiar. It's a Russian take on the Brave Tailor. I wanted to include this story this week to remind us all that while often people think of folklore and fairy tales as just, diversions, stories to tell, it really is important, and they do help to define how cultures interact with one another. This one is, as I said, a Russian tale that starts off in a very familiar place as the Brave Tailor, but it ends up with a bit of a conflict between Russia and China. This is Thomas Berennikov. Once upon a time there lived in a village a miserably poor peasant called Tommy Berennikov. Thomas's tongue could wag right well, and in mother wit he was no worse than his neighbors, but he was anything but handsome to look at, and for working in the fields he was not worth a button. One day he went into the field to plough. The work was heavy, and his nag was a wretched hack, quite starved and scarce able to drag along the plough, so at last Tom gave way to woe, sat down on a little stone, and immediately whole swarms of blowflies and gadflies fell upon his poor knacker from every quarter and stuck fast. Thomas seized a bundle of dry twigs and thwacked his horse about the back with all his might. The horse never stirred from the spot, and the blowflies and the gadflies fell off him in swarms. Thomas began to count how many he had killed. 8 gadflies, and there was no numbering the slain of the other flies. Then Thomas Berennikov smiled. "That's something like," said he. "We've killed 8 at a blow, and there's no counting the smaller fry. Why, what a warrior I am, what a hero! I won't plough any more, I'll fight. I'll turn hero and go seek my fortune." And he took his crooked sickle from his shoulders, hung up his bast basket by his girdle, placed in this basket his blunt scythe, and then he mounted his hack and wandered forth into the wide world. He went on till he came to a post on which passing heroes had inscribed their names, and he wrote with chalk on this post, "The hero Thomas Berennikov had passed this way, who slew 8 at one blow, and of the smaller fry without number." This he wrote and went on further. He had only got a mile from this post when 2 stalwart young heroes came galloping up to it, read the inscription, and asked one another, "What unheard of hero is this? Whither has he gone? I never heard of his gallant steed, and there is no trace of his knightly deed." They followed hard upon Thomas, overtook him, and were amazed at the sight of him. "What sort of a horse is this fellow riding on?" cried they. "Why, 'tis a mere hack. Then all his prowess cannot be in the horse, but in the hero himself." And they both rode up to Thomas and said to him quite humbly and mildly, "Peace be with thee, good man." Thomas looked at them over his shoulder, and without moving his head said, "Who are you?" "Ilya Moramets and Alisha Popovich. We would fain be thy comrades." "Well, maybe you'll do. Follow behind me, pray." They came to the realm of the neighboring Tsar, and went straight into his preserves. Here they let their horses out to graze, and laid themselves down to rest beneath their tent. The neighboring Tsar sent out against them 100 horsemen of his guard, and bade them drive away the strangers from his preserves. Ilya Moramets and Alisha Popovich said to Thomas, "Wilt thou go against them, or wilt thou send us?" "What, forsooth? Do you think I'd soil my hands going against such muck? No, go thou, Ilya Moramets, and show thy prowess." So Ilya Moramets set him on his heroic steed, charged the Tsar's horsemen, swooped down upon them like a bright falcon on a flock of doves, smote them, and cut them all down to the very last one. At this the Tsar was still more wroth, collected all of his host that was in the town, both horse and foot, and bade his captains drive the wandering strangers out of his preserves without ceremony. The Tsar's army advanced on the preserves, blew with their trumpets, and columns of dust arose in their path. Ilya Moramets and Alisha Popovich came to Thomas and said to him, "Wilt thou go thyself against the foe, or wilt thou send one of us?" But Thomas, who was lying on his side, did not so much as turn him around, but said to the heroes, "The idea of my coming to blows with this rabble, the idea of soiling my heroic hands with the like of them. No, go thou, Alesha Popovitch, and show them our style of fighting, and I'll look on and see if thy valor be of the right sort." Alesha rushed like a whirlwind upon the Tsar's host. His armor rattled like thunder. He waved his mace from afar, and shouted with a voice more piercing than the clang of clarions, "I will slay and smash all of you without mercy." He flew upon the host and began crushing it. The captain saw that everyone took to his heels before him, and there was no way of stopping him. So they blew a retreat with the trumpets, retired towards the town, and came themselves with an apology to Alesha, and said, "Tell us now, strong and potent hero, by what name must we call thee? And tell us thy father's name, that we may honor it. What tribute must we give thee, that thou mayst trouble us no more, and leave our realm in peace?" "'Tis not to me you must give tribute," answered Alesha. "I am but a subordinate. I do what I am bidden by my elder brother, the famous hero Thomas Berennikov. You must reckon with him. He will spare you if he pleases, but if he does not please, he will level your whole kingdom with the ground." The Tsar heard these words, and sent Tommy rich gifts, and an honorable embassy of distinguished persons, and bade them say, "We beg the famous hero Thomas Berennikov to come and visit us, to dwell in our royal court, and help us to war against the Khan of China. If, O hero, thou dost succeed in smiting utterly the countless Chinese host, then I will give thee my own daughter, and after my death thou shalt have the whole realm." But Tommy put on a long face and said, "What's that? Well, well, I don't mind. I suppose I may as well consent to that." Then he mounted his hack, commanded his heroic younger brethren to ride behind him, and went as a guest to the neighboring Tsar. Tommy had not yet thoroughly succeeded in testing the quality of the Tsar's kitchen. He had not yet thoroughly rested from his labors, when there came a threatening embassy from the Khan of China, demanding that the whole kingdom should acknowledge him as its liege lord, and that the Tsar should send him his only daughter. "Tell your Khan," replied the Tsar, "that I fear him no longer. I now have a firm support, a sure defense, the famous hero Thomas Berennikov, who can slay 8 at one blow of his sword, and of the lesser fry without number. If life is not pleasant to your Khan and your Chinese brethren, come to my empire, and you shall have cause to remember Thomas Berennikov." In 2 days a countless Chinese host surrounded the city of the Tsar, and the Chinese Khan sent to say, "I have here an unconquerable hero, the like of whom the world knows not. Send out against him thy Thomas. If thy champion prevails, I'll submit, and pay thee a tribute from my whole Khanate. But if mine prevails, thou must give me thy daughter, and pay me a tribute from thy whole kingdom." So now it was the turn of Thomas Berennikov to show his prowess. And his heroic younger brothers, Ilya Muromets and Alesha Popovitch, said to him, "Mighty and potent hero, our elder brother, how wilt thou fight against this Chinaman without armor? Take our martial armor, choose the best of our heroic horses." Thomas Berennikov answered thus, "How then? Must I hide myself in armor from this shaven pate? Why, I could finish off this Chinaman with one hand quite easily. Why, you yourselves, when you first saw me, said, 'Tis plain that we must not look upon the horse, but at the warrior." But Thomas thought to himself, "I'm in a pretty pickle now. Well, let the Chinaman kill me if he likes. I'll not be put to shame over the business anyhow." Then they brought him his hack. He mounted it in peasant style, struck it with his bunch of twigs, and went into the open plain at a gentle amble. The Chinese Khan had armed his champion like a fortress. He clothed him in armor 12 puds, 480 pounds, in weight, taught him the use of every weapon, put in his hands a battle-axe 80 pounds in weight, and said to him just before he set out, "Mark me, and recollect my words. When a Russian hero cannot prevail by force, he will overcome by cunning, so lest thou should get the worst of it, take care and do everything the Russian hero does." So the champions went out against each other into the open field, and Thomas saw the Chinese hero advancing against him, as big as a mountain, with his head like a beer cask and covered with armor like a tortoise in its shell, so that he was scarcely able to move. So Tommy had recourse to artifice. He got off his horse and sat down on a stone and began to sharpen his scythe. The Chinese hero, when he saw that, got off his horse immediately, fastened it to a tree, and began to whet his axe against a stone also. When Thomas had finished sharpening his scythe, he marched up to the Chinaman and said to him, "We two are mighty impotent heroes. We may have come out against each other in mortal combat, but before we pitch into each other we ought to show each other proper respect, and salute one another after the custom of the country." And he saluted the Chinaman with a very low bow. "Oh," thought the Chinaman, "here's some piece of trickery I know. I'll bow yet lower." And he bowed himself to the very ground. But before he could raise himself up again in his heavy armor, Thomas rushed at him, tickled him once or twice in the neck, and so cut his throat through for him. Then he leaped upon the heroic horse of the Chinaman, scrambled on top of it somehow, flourished his birch of twigs, tried to grasp his reins, and forgot quite that the horse was tied to a tree. But the good horse, as soon as he felt a rider on his back, tugged and pulled till he tore the tree up by the roots, and off he set at a full gallop toward the Chinese host, dragging after him the big tree as if it had been a mere feather. Thomas Berennikov was terribly frightened and began bawling, "Help! Help!" But the Chinese host feared him more than a snowstorm, and it seemed to them as if he were crying to them, "Run! Run!" So they took to their heels without once looking back. But the heroic horse plunged into the midst of them, trampled them beneath its feet, and the huge tree trunk scattered them in all directions. Wherever it plunged, it left a wide road behind it. The Chinese swore that they would never fight with Thomas again, and this resolution was lucky for Thomas. He returned to the town on his own hack, and they were all amazed at his strength, valor, and success. "What dost thou require of me?" said the Tsar to Thomas. "1/2 of my golden treasures and my daughter into the bargain, or 1/2 of my glorious kingdom?" "Well, I'll take half your kingdom if you like, but I wouldn't turn up my nose at either your daughter with half the golden treasure for a dowry. And look now, when I get married, don't forget to invite to the wedding my younger brothers, Ilya Muromets and Alesha Popovich." And Thomas married the thrice lovely Tsarevna, and they celebrated the wedding so gloriously that the heads of all the guests ached for more than 2 weeks afterwards. I too was there, and I drank mead and ale and got rich gifts, and so my tale is told. And that is the story of Thomas Berennikov. And once again, I say this often when I say things that can certainly be a bit offensive. I'm reading this directly from the translation. This story was captured by Robert Nisbet Bain in 1901. This is Dan Scholes for the Folktale Project. Don't forget that you can subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play, Overcast, anywhere you like to get your podcasts. You can follow us on Twitter at Folktale Project. You can find us on Auto Radio, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, Spotify, anywhere you like to listen. And you can always head over to folktaleproject.com, where you'll find a new story waiting for you every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. As always, thank you so much for listening.